The clock on the laptop read 11:47 when Marcus Donovan decided he couldn't sleep. Not tonight. Not on August 14th. Never on August 14th. 71 years old and his body still remembered. The ache in his left shoulder where the shrapnel had lodged. The slight tremor in his hands when the temperature dropped. The way his heart would race at sudden loud noises. The body keeps score, the VA therapist had told him. Even when the mind tries to forget, the body remembers. Marcus sat in the garage of his small rental house in Victorville, California. Not much of a place for a retired colonel, but it was enough. 4 walls, a roof, and most importantly, a garage where he could sit at night when the memories came flooding back. The garage walls were covered in photographs. 40 years of service, reduced to frames and fading paper. Young faces staring out from desert backgrounds. Tanks lined up in formation. Ceremonies and awards and handshakes with generals whose names he sometimes struggled to remember now. But there was one photograph he never forgot, never could forget. It sat on a small shelf directly in front of his chair. A teenage boy in a hospital bed, head wrapped in a blue bandana to hide the baldness from chemotherapy. The boy was smiling, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. Those eyes held something else. Sadness, maybe. Or perhaps forgiveness. Marcus had spent 20 years trying to decode that expression. The laptop chimed. Marcus jerked, his hand instinctively reaching for a sidearm that hadn't been on his hip in 17 years. His heart hammered. Just an email, just a sound. But sounds had meant incoming fire once. Sounds had meant someone was about to die. He steadied his breathing. 4 counts in. Hold. 4 counts out. The technique they taught at the VA. It helped. Sometimes. The email notification glowed on the screen. The sender address was a long string of military characters. The subject line read simply, urgent. Marcus clicked it open. The message was short, direct. The way soldiers communicated when time was currency and words were expensive. Colonel Donovan, Captain David Chen, 3rd Battalion, 7th Armor, Forward Operating Base Salerno, Afghanistan. Sir, we are cut off. 6 KIA, 4 WIA. Radio is dying, resupply impossible. You taught me 30 rules for staying alive in armor. I need the 31st, the one for when there are no good choices left, the one you never wrote down. Please, sir, I need to know what to do when every option leads to blood. Marcus read it 3 times. His hands shook harder now and not from the old wounds. David Chen. He remembered the kid. Not a kid anymore, obviously had to be 41 now. But Marcus still saw him as he'd been 14 years ago. 28 years old, young captain with a pregnant wife, trying to balance duty and family. The kind of officer who asked hard questions and actually listened to the answers. Marcus had spent 6 months teaching him at Fort Benning, replacing blind eagerness with wisdom, with the kind of measured thinking that kept both soldiers and families whole. David had been a good student, sharp, quick to learn, and brave enough to choose differently than Marcus had chosen. And now David was trapped somewhere in the mountains of Afghanistan, watching his soldiers die, asking for an answer Marcus had spent 20 years trying to avoid. The 31st Commandment. Marcus closed the laptop, stood, walked to the photograph wall. His legs protested. 71 years old and everything hurt. But pain was good. Pain meant you were still alive. The dead didn't hurt. He stopped in front of the hospital photograph. Eric James Donovan. Born March 15, 1984. Died November 9, 2004. 20 years, 7 months, and 25 days of life. Not enough. Never enough. Marcus reached out, touched the frame with trembling fingers. There is a 31st commandment, he thought. I've known it for 20 years. I just never had the courage to speak it out loud. But David needed it. David, trapped in the mountains with dying soldiers and impossible choices, needed what Marcus had learned in the worst possible way. Marcus looked at his son's face in the photograph, the smile that didn't reach the eyes, the forgiveness Marcus had never earned. He walked back to the laptop, opened it, stared at the blank reply screen. What could he say? What words existed that could capture what he'd learned? What wisdom could possibly justify the price he'd paid for that knowledge? His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Nothing came. Marcus closed the laptop again, sat back, let his head fall into his hands. To answer David's question, he would have to go back. Back to the beginning. Back to when he'd been young and certain and stupid enough to think he could have it all. Career and family, duty and love, the tank and the boy. Back to when he believed impossible choices were just challenges waiting for the right solution. Back to before he learned that some choices don't have right answers. Only costs, only blood, only ghosts that follow you home and never leave. Marcus stood, walked to his truck. It was nearly midnight, but sleep wouldn't come tonight. It never did on August 14th. He knew where he needed to go. The National Training Center at Fort Irwin was 40 miles away. They had a small museum there. And in that museum, in a glass case, sat a worn leather notebook. His notebook. The one he'd kept for 40 years. The one that contained 30 commandments for armored warfare, each one learned in fire and blood and the screams of dying men. The notebook didn't have a 31st commandment written in it, but maybe tonight it was time to write it. Marcus started the truck. The engine turned over with a familiar rumble. Some things never changed: steel and gasoline, and the road stretching out into darkness. He pulled out of the garage, leaving the photographs behind, but the memories rode with him. They always did. Chapter 1. The Boy in the Tank. 1986. Fort Hood, Texas. Summer heat that could melt asphalt and turn tank hulls into ovens. Captain Marcus Donovan, 33 years old, stood in the motor pool watching his company's M1 Abrams tanks lined up in perfect formation, 68 tons of armor and firepower each. The most lethal weapon system the Army had ever produced, and they were his responsibility. Executive Officer of Bravo Company, 1st Battalion, 8th Cavalry Regiment, 13 tanks under his command, 52 men whose lives depended on his decisions. It was everything he'd worked for since graduating from West Point 11 years earlier. The morning sun reflected off the tank hulls, turning them into mirrors of blinding light. Marcus squinted against the glare. He'd learned to love this moment, the quiet before the day began, when the machines sat silent and deadly, waiting for their crews to bring them to life. His radio crackled. The company commander's voice. "Captain Donovan, we've got a meeting at Battalion, 0800, all officers. Make sure your platoon leaders are ready." Marcus keyed his handset. "Roger that, sir, we'll be there." He checked his watch. 7:15. 45 minutes to get cleaned up and brief his lieutenants. Plenty of time. Then he remembered. Saturday morning, 7:15. He'd promised Catherine he'd be home by 7:30. Promised he'd take Eric to the zoo. The boy had been talking about it all week. Lions and elephants and tigers, oh my. Eric's favorite movie was The Wizard of Oz. He could recite the whole thing from memory at 2 years old. 2 years old and already smart as hell. Catherine said he got that from Marcus. Marcus wasn't so sure. The kid definitely got his mother's smile, that was certain. And her kindness, her patience, her ability to forgive. Marcus looked at his watch again. 7:16 now. The battalion meeting would run until at least 0900, maybe 10. Then there'd be the inevitable follow-up discussions, the additional taskings, the things that always came up when officers gathered. He could call Catherine, explain. She'd understand. She always understood. Except she'd understood 3 times this month already. When he'd missed Eric's doctor's appointment. When he'd come home at midnight instead of 6. When he'd spent Sunday at the motor pool instead of at the park like he'd promised. How many times could one woman be expected to understand? Marcus pulled out his wallet. Inside was a photograph. Catherine and Eric, taken last Christmas. Catherine holding the boy, both of them laughing at something off camera. Probably Marcus making faces trying to get Eric to smile for the picture. The boy's face was pure joy, uncomplicated, simple, the way childhood should be. Marcus closed the wallet, keyed his radio. "Lieutenant Morrison, this is Captain Donovan. I need you to cover the battalion meeting this morning. Something's come up." A pause. Then Morrison's voice, young and eager. "Sir, are you sure?" The commander specifically said all officers. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. A sensation he'd later come to recognize as the first warning sign. The moment when you stood at a crossroads and didn't realize it. When the choice seemed small, but the consequences would echo for decades. "I'll handle," the commander, Marcus said. "You take notes. Brief me afterward." Another pause, longer this time. "Roger that, sir." Marcus signed off, started walking toward his truck. He'd go home, take Eric to the zoo, spend the day being a father instead of an officer. Catherine would be surprised, happy. Eric would probably jump up and down and do that thing where he ran in circles when he got excited. It would be good. It would be right. Marcus made it 10 steps before his radio crackled again. "Captain Donovan, this is Colonel Harrison, the battalion commander." Direct line. That was never good. Marcus stopped walking, keyed the handset. "Donovan here, sir." Captain, I understand you're not planning to attend the 0800 briefing. Word traveled fast in battalion headquarters. Sir, I had a personal commitment that... Captain, this briefing is about our rotation to the National Training Center. We deploy in 3 weeks. I need every officer present. This isn't optional. The words hung in the air, settled like lead in Marcus's stomach. He looked at his truck, 30 feet away. Freedom, family, the promise he'd made. Then he looked at the tanks behind him, the machines that needed him, the soldiers who depended on him, the mission that always came first. I'll be there, sir, Marcus heard himself say. Good. 0745, don't be late. The radio went dead. Marcus stood in the motor pool for a long moment. The sun was fully up now, the heat building. He could feel sweat starting to form under his uniform. He pulled out his cell phone, the big brick model that barely fit in your hand. Technology was changing fast. Soon they'd probably make phones small enough to carry in your pocket, people said. He dialed home. Catherine answered on the third ring. Hey, honey, she said. Her voice still had that morning softness. She'd probably just finished making breakfast. Eric would be in his high chair, covered in oatmeal or whatever Catherine had convinced him to eat that day. Kath, Marcus stopped, started again. I've got a battalion meeting. Emergency briefing about NTC rotation. Silence on the other end. Not the good kind of silence. The kind that felt like disappointment given weight. You promised him, Catherine said finally. Her voice was quiet, controlled, which somehow made it worse than if she'd yelled. I know, I'm sorry. I'll make it up to him. Next Saturday, I promise. That's what you said last time, Marcus. This is important. The whole company is... He's 2 years old. You're important to him. Marcus closed his eyes, tried to find the words that would make this okay, that would make her understand why he had to choose the battalion over the boy, why duty had to come first. But there weren't any words. There never were. I'm sorry, he said again, because what else could he say? Another silence. Then Catherine's voice, softer now, resigned. I'll tell him you had to work. He won't understand, but I'll tell him. Thank you. Marcus? Her voice caught slightly. How many more times are we going to have this conversation? He didn't have an answer for that. I love you, he said instead. I know you do. I just wish I knew if that was enough. She hung up. Marcus stood holding the phone until the dial tone turned to that harsh beeping sound they used to signal a disconnected line. Then he put it away, straightened his uniform, started walking toward the battalion headquarters building. Behind him, the tanks sat silent in the rising heat, waiting, patient, demanding nothing except his complete devotion. He gave it to them because that's what soldiers did. That's what leaders did. That's what he told himself anyway, as he walked away from the promise he'd made to his son. Chapter 2, The Weight of Command. The National Training Center at Fort Irwin, California, July 1990. Desert heat that made Fort Hood feel like Alaska. Major Marcus Donovan, now 37 years old, stood in the turret of his M1A1 Abrams tank and watched his company maneuver through the Mojave Desert. 14 tanks spread out in tactical formation, kicking up rooster tails of dust that marked their positions for miles. Not ideal. In real combat, that dust would draw artillery fire within minutes. But this was training. The OPFOR, Osmanum War, the opposition force that played enemy for training rotations, already knew where they were. The whole point was to learn from mistakes before those mistakes got you killed in actual war. Marcus keyed his radio. All Lancer elements, this is Lancer 6. Slow your advance. You're pushing too fast and losing dispersion. Maintain 500-meter intervals. Acknowledgements came back over the net. The tanks adjusted, spreading out, slowing down. Marcus watched through his binoculars. Better. Not perfect, but better. His gunner, Staff Sergeant Leon Washington, stuck his head up through the hatch. 41 years old, Vietnam veteran, been in armor longer than Marcus had been in the Army. The troops called him Doc because he had this calm way of handling problems, like a physician diagnosing an illness. Sir, you see that ridge line at 2 o'clock? Doc pointed with a gloved hand. Marcus swung his binoculars, saw it immediately, a perfect hold-down position overlooking their road of advance. If he was out for, that's exactly where he'd position anti-tank weapons. Good eye, Doc. Alpha Section, this is 6. You've got possible enemy positions grid November Victor 478-321. Button up and be ready to engage. More acknowledgements. Doc smiled, that slow Texas drawl evident even in his grin. You're getting good at this, sir. Couple more years, you might actually know what you're doing. Marcus smiled back. That was Doc. 20 years of experience wrapped in humility and dry humor. The kind of NCO who made officers look good by preventing them from doing stupid things. Couple more years. I'll be too old for this, Marcus said. Nah, sir. Armor keeps you young. It's the family life that ages you. The words hit harder than Doc probably intended. Marcus hadn't spoken to Catherine in 3 weeks. Not since the phone call when she told him she was taking Eric, now 6 years old, back to her parents' house in Virginia. Not leaving him. Just taking a break. Needing some space to think about whether she could keep doing this. Doing what? Marcus had asked. Being married to a man who's always somewhere else, Catherine had said. I'm doing this for you, Marcus had tried to explain. All sausage fun for Eric, so he grows up safe. He needs a father, Marcus, not a hero. The conversation had ended there. Marcus had tried calling back, left messages. Catherine hadn't answered. That was 3 weeks ago. Now he was in the California desert, leading a company of tanks through a training exercise, trying not to think about his son growing up wondering why his father was never home. The radio crackled. An urgent voice. Lieutenant Brian Castellano, one of his platoon leaders. Lancer 6, this is Blue 1. We have OP4 visual, multiple vehicles, that ridge line you called. They're engaging. Simulated, of course. The OP4 used Miles gear, laser systems that registered hits without actual ammunition. But the tactics were real. The pressure was real. The adrenaline was real. All Lancer elements. Action left. Spread out and return fire. Alpha section, flank right. Bravo section, suppress. The company exploded into coordinated chaos. Tanks pivoting, main guns traversing, commander shouting orders. It was beautiful in its violence, deadly in its precision. This was what Marcus was good at. This made sense. Clear objectives. Defined enemy. Success measured in targets destroyed and friendly forces preserved. Not like family. Not like marriage. Not like watching your son's face fall every time you explained you couldn't make it to his birthday party, his school play, his soccer game. The engagement lasted 15 minutes. When it was over, Marcus's company had destroyed the OP4 position with minimal losses. 1 tank hit, crew okay, good ratio, good tactics, good leadership. The after-action review would reflect that. The battalion commander would be pleased. Marcus's efficiency report would note his exceptional performance. Another step up the career ladder. Another day not being a father. That night, after the company had circled the tanks into a defensive perimeter and the soldiers had settled into their rest cycles, Marcus sat in his command vehicle trying to write a letter home. Dear Eric, he wrote, then stopped. What could he say? That Daddy was sorry for missing your birthday? That Daddy promises he'll be home for Christmas? That Daddy loves you even though he's never there to show it? The words felt hollow, meaningless, like trying to fill a canyon with pebbles. Doc Washington climbed into the track, carrying 2 MREs and a canteen cup of coffee so thick it could probably stop small arms fire. Figured you hadn't eaten, sir, Doc said, handing over one of the meals. Thanks, Doc. They sat in silence for a while, eating processed food that tasted like cardboard and chemicals. Field dining at its finest. You okay, sir? Doc asked finally. Marcus looked up. Why wouldn't I be? Because you ran that engagement like a man with something to prove. And in my experience, when an officer starts trying to prove something, it usually means there's something back home he's trying not to think about. Marcus set down his MRE. That obvious? Only to someone who's been there. Doc took a sip of his coffee. My daddy was a soldier. Korea, Purple Heart, Bronze Star, all of it. He was a hero. Was? Killed in action when I was 8, never came home. Doc stared into his coffee like he could see the past in there. My mama used to tell me he died protecting his country, that I should be proud, and I am. But I'm 41 years old now, and you know what I think about sometimes? Marcus waited. I think about how I can't remember his voice, can't remember him teaching me to throw a baseball or helping with homework or any of that normal dad stuff. All I remember is him leaving, and then the telegram, and my mama crying. Doc looked at Marcus directly now. Sir, you're good at this. Best company commander I've served under. But being good at being a soldier don't make you good at being a father. And your boy don't care if you're the best tank company commander in the Army. He just wants you to be his daddy. The words settled between them like unexploded ordnance. Marcus thought about Eric, 6 years old now, starting to develop a personality, starting to ask questions. Why is Daddy always gone? When is Daddy coming home? Does Daddy love the Army more than he loves me? What if I can't be both? Marcus asked quietly. Then you choose, Doc said. But make sure you can live with your choice, because choices like that don't go away. They follow you every day, every night, for the rest of your life. Doc finished his coffee, climbed out of the track, left Marcus alone with his half-written letter and his fully formed doubts. Marcus looked at the paper. Dear Eric. He crumpled it up, started over. Dear Eric, I'm sorry. But sorry wasn't enough. Sorry wouldn't make up for the missed birthdays. Sorry wouldn't erase the disappointment in his son's eyes when Marcus explained, again, why he couldn't be there. Sorry was just a word, and words were cheap. Marcus put the letter away. Tomorrow they'd run another training exercise. He'd lead his company with skill and precision. He'd make his superiors proud. He'd continue building a career that was everything he'd ever wanted. And somewhere in Virginia, his son would go to sleep wondering why his father had chosen tanks over him. Marcus told himself it was for a greater good, that protecting the nation meant protecting Eric, that his service mattered. He told himself a lot of things that night. None of them made him feel any better. Chapter 3, The Letter. 20,000 feet above the Atlantic Ocean. February 2003. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Donovan sat in the cargo bay of a C-17 transport plane, surrounded by soldiers from his battalion. 400 men and women, all heading to Kuwait as part of the buildup for what everyone knew was coming. Operation Iraqi Freedom, the invasion of Iraq, the war that had been inevitable since September 11, 2001. Marcus was 49 years old now, battalion executive officer, 2nd Battalion, 6th Armor Regiment, 16 years since that morning at Fort Hood when he'd chosen a battalion meeting over taking his son to the zoo. 16 years of choosing wrong. Eric was 19 now. Should have been starting his 2nd semester of college. Should have been worrying about finals and girls and what career to pursue. Instead, Eric was in a hospital bed at MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, fighting stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. The diagnosis had come 4 months earlier. November 2002. Eric had been complaining of fatigue, weight loss. Catherine had insisted on tests. The doctors had found tumors in his chest and abdomen. Stage 3, they'd said initially. Treatable. Good prognosis with aggressive chemotherapy. Marcus had requested immediate compassionate reassignment. The Army had approved it. He'd been scheduled to move to Fort Sam Houston, close to the hospital, able to be there for his son's treatment. Then September 11th happened. Then Afghanistan. Then the drumbeat of war with Iraq. Then the Army came back and said, sorry, we need you. Your battalion is deploying. Your country needs you. Your son needs you, Catherine had said over the phone. My country needs me more, Marcus had said, and hated himself for saying it. Then in January, just 2 weeks before deployment, the cancer had spread. Liver, lymph nodes, stage 4. The doctors had been gentle but clear. 12 to 18 months, maybe less. The chemo would buy time but probably not cure it. Marcus had called his battalion commander, requested to stay behind, family emergency. The commander had been sympathetic, also pragmatic. You're the XO. The battalion needs you. This is war. We all make sacrifices. So here Marcus sat 40,000 feet above the ocean, flying away from his dying son, telling himself it was the right choice. Telling himself a lot of things. The soldier next to him, a young specialist who couldn't have been more than 20, leaned over. Sir, you okay? You look like you're about to puke. Marcus realized he was gripping the armrest so hard his knuckles had turned white. I'm fine, soldier. First deployment, sir? Marcus almost laughed. No, son, this is my 3rd. Oh, well, you look nervous. My first deployment. I'm pretty nervous. That's smart, Marcus said. Nervous keeps you alert. Alert keeps you alive. The specialist nodded, satisfied with this wisdom from an experienced officer. If only he knew the truth, that Marcus wasn't nervous about the war. Marcus knew war. War made sense. War had rules and objectives and clear measures of success. No, Marcus was terrified because in his breast pocket was a letter, and he couldn't bring himself to read it. Catherine had handed it to him at the airport, just before he'd gone through security. Her eyes had been red from crying. Eric wanted you to have this, she'd said. He made me promise to give it to you before you left. Marcus had taken the envelope, tried to open it right there. No, Catherine had said. He said to read it on the plane when you have time to think. Then she'd left, hadn't hugged him, hadn't kissed him goodbye, just walked away with her shoulders shaking and her hand over her mouth. Now Marcus sat with that letter in his pocket, had been sitting with it for 8 hours, couldn't make himself open it, because he knew what it would say, knew his son would be kind about it, because Eric was like his mother that way. Eric would probably say he understood, that he was proud of his father, that he forgave him. And that would make it so much worse. Marcus could handle anger, could handle resentment, but forgiveness? Forgiveness from a 19-year-old boy dying of cancer while his father flew to a war zone? That was unbearable. Master Sergeant Washington appeared through the cargo bay. Doc had insisted on deploying with the battalion, even though he was 54 now and could have retired years ago. "Sir, you gonna read that letter or just stare at it?" Doc settled into the seat across from Marcus. "How did you—" "Been knowing you for 17 years, sir. I can tell when something's eating at you." Doc leaned forward. "Your boy write you?" Marcus nodded. "And you're scared to read it?" "Terrified. Want me to tell you what it says?" "You're psychic now?" Doc smiled that slow smile. "Nah, but I know what a good kid writes to his father before his father goes to war. He tells you he loves you, tells you he's proud of you, tells you not to worry about him, tells you to come home safe." "How do you know Eric's a good kid?" "Because despite everything, despite you being gone his whole life, he still wanted you to have a letter. Bad kids don't do that. Bad kids stop caring." The cargo bay lights dimmed. Soldiers around them were settling in for the long flight. Some sleeping, some reading, some just staring at nothing, thinking about what waited for them on the other side of the ocean. Marcus pulled out the envelope. His hand shook slightly as he opened it. The handwriting was shaky. Eric's coordination was being affected by the chemo. But the words were clear. "Dad, by the time you read this, you'll be on your way to Kuwait. Mom tried to convince you to stay. I know you wanted to, but I told her you should go, not because I don't need you, I do, but because those soldiers need you more. They have families too, fathers and mothers and kids who want them to come home. You're going to bring them home. That's what you do. That's who you are. I'm proud of that. I'm proud of you. I know we haven't been close. I know I resented you for a long time. All those missed birthdays and soccer games and school events. I thought you didn't care. But I understand now. You were protecting us. All of us, every kid in America who gets to grow up without bombs falling on their houses. You were doing that. So go. Do your job. Bring those soldiers home. I'll be here when you get back. I promise I'll wait for you. We'll have time then. Time to talk. Time to be father and son the way we should have been all along. I love you, Dad. Come home safe. Eric." Marcus read it 3 times, then carefully folded it and put it back in his pocket. Doc was watching him. "Good kid?" Doc asked. "The best," Marcus managed to say. "Then make sure you keep his promise." "His promise?" "Come home safe. Come home to him. War can wait. Cancer can't." The plane hit turbulence. The whole cargo bay shuddered. Somewhere in the back, someone dropped something that clanged against metal. Marcus thought about that letter, about Eric's promise to wait, about his own promise to come home, about how many promises he'd already broken in 19 years. "Doc," Marcus said quietly, "what if I can't keep this one either?" "Then you'll regret it for the rest of your life," Doc said. Simple, direct, true. "But at least you'll have a life to regret it with." Eric might not. The words hit like artillery. Direct hit. No cover, no protection. Doc stood up, headed back toward his seat, stopped and turned. "Sir, I'm gonna tell you something my daddy never got the chance to learn. Being a soldier is important, but it ain't the most important thing. Your boy is dying. You can be the best battalion XO in the Army, bring every soldier home safe, win every medal they can pin on you. But if your boy dies while you're gone, none of that will matter. None of it will fill that hole." Doc walked away. Marcus sat alone in the dimming cargo bay, surrounded by soldiers heading to war, holding a letter from his dying son. Outside the small window, the sun was setting over the Atlantic. Streaks of orange and purple painted the sky, beautiful and terrible at the same time, like every choice he'd ever made. Marcus pressed the letter against his chest, felt the paper through his uniform. Thin, fragile, like life itself. "I promise, Eric," he whispered to the empty air. "I promise I'll come home." But even as he said it, even as he meant it with everything in him, Marcus Donovan knew the truth. He'd made that promise before, many times, to Catherine, to Eric, to himself, and he'd broken it every time. Because when the nation called, when his soldiers needed him, when duty demanded his presence, Marcus always chose the same thing. He chose the mission. He chose the Army. He chose the tank over the boy. And somewhere in Houston, in a hospital bed, a 19-year-old kid with stage 4 cancer would wait for his father to come home. Wait and hope and believe in a promise that Marcus desperately wanted to keep, but didn't know if he could. The plane flew on through the darkening sky, carrying 400 soldiers toward a war zone, carrying one lieutenant colonel toward a choice that would define the rest of his life, carrying Marcus Donovan toward the moment when he would have to decide once and for all what mattered most. His duty to his country, or his duty to his son. The letter in his pocket felt heavy, heavier than armor, heavier than steel, heavy as the weight of every wrong choice, every missed moment, every broken promise of 19 years. Marcus closed his eyes, tried to sleep, knew he wouldn't. The dead don't sleep well, and Marcus was already dead inside. He just hadn't admitted it yet. Chapter 4, Desert Thunder. Kuwait, March 19, 2003, the night before the invasion. Marcus stood beside his Humvee, looking north toward Iraq. Somewhere beyond the border, an army waited. Marcus's battalion had 58 M1A2 Abrams tanks. On paper, it wasn't even a fair fight. But paper didn't bleed. Paper didn't write letters home to dying sons. His radio crackled. The battalion commander's voice. All Charlie Mike elements. This is Charlie Mike 6. H-hour is confirmed. 0530. Weather is holding. We cross the line in 7 hours. Get your soldiers ready. This is what we trained for. Marcus keyed his handset. Charlie Mike 5 acknowledges. Around him, the battalion was settling into the strange quiet that always came before battle. Soldiers checking equipment one last time. Tank crews doing final maintenance. Officers reviewing maps and contingency plans. Everything by the book. Everything professional. Everything designed to give young men and women the best possible chance of surviving what came next. Captain Jake Morrison walked up. 29 years old, armor officer, company commander of Alpha Company, married, one son, 4 years old. Marcus had seen the photograph Jake carried. The boy had his father's eyes. Sir, Alpha is ready, Jake said. All systems green, all crews at full strength. Good. How are your soldiers? Jake was quiet for a moment. Scared, excited, ready, all of the above. That's normal. How are you? Another pause. Honestly, sir, terrified. Marcus appreciated the honesty. Too many young officers felt like they had to project confidence they didn't feel. That false bravado got people killed. You should be, Marcus said. Fear keeps you sharp. Use it. Yes, sir. Jake hesitated. Sir, can I ask you something? Go ahead. How do you do it? Stay calm. Make decisions. When everything is chaos and people are dying, how do you not freeze up? Marcus thought about that question. Thought about all the answers he could give. Tactical ones. Leadership ones. The kind of wisdom that looked good in after-action reports. Instead, he told the truth. You focus on what you can control. You can't control the enemy. Can't control the weather. Can't control whether a round hits or misses. But you can control your decisions, your training, your discipline. So you focus on that, on bringing your people home. Everything else is noise. Jake nodded slowly. And when someone doesn't come home, then you carry them, and you try to make their sacrifice mean something by saving the next one. Jake looked toward Iraq. My son Tyler just turned 4. When I left, he cried, held onto my leg. I promised I'd come back. Marcus felt something twist in his chest. He knew that scene, had lived it with Eric. Sir, what if I can't keep that promise? Then you won't be the first soldier who didn't. But you can do everything possible to try. Be smart, careful, disciplined. If you do that and still don't make it home, at least Tyler will know his father fought to get back to him. Jake nodded, seemed to take comfort in that. If only he knew, Marcus thought. If only he knew that even doing everything right sometimes isn't enough. That sometimes you make all the correct tactical decisions and still lose what matters most. That sometimes the choice is not between right and wrong, but between two different kinds of pain. Jake saluted and headed back to his company. Marcus watched him go. Another young officer, another young father, another man who would have to balance duty and love and hope the scales came out even. Marcus pulled out Eric's letter, read it again by red flashlight. The words were becoming familiar now, almost comforting in their certainty. I'll wait for you, Eric had written. Marcus folded the letter carefully, put it back in his breast pocket, right over his heart. I'm coming home, son, he whispered. I promise. This time, I promise. But even as he made that vow, even as he meant it with every fiber of his being, Marcus felt the weight of the mission pressing down on him. 58 tanks, 400 soldiers, all depending on him to make the right calls, to keep them alive. to bring them home. How could he focus on getting home to Eric when 400 families were counting on him to bring their loved ones home? The answer was simple and terrible. He couldn't. So Marcus did what soldiers do, what leaders do, what he'd always done. He put the mission first, put his soldiers first, put everyone except himself and his family first. Because that's what duty demanded. That's what honor required. That's what he'd sworn an oath to do. Even if it killed him, even if it cost him everything, even if it meant his son would die waiting for a father who arrived too late. The desert wind picked up, cold at night, always surprising how cold deserts got when the sun went down. The temperature could drop 50 degrees in a few hours. Marcus shivered, pulled his jacket tighter. 7 hours until they crossed into Iraq. 7 hours until the shooting started. 7 hours until he would find out if he was as good at this as everyone believed. 7 hours to think about Eric in that hospital bed, waiting, believing, trusting that his father would come home. Marcus looked up at the stars. No light pollution out here. The Milky Way spread across the sky like a river of diamonds. Beautiful, indifferent, eternal. Somewhere under these same stars, Eric lay in a hospital room. Tubes running into his arms. Chemicals poisoning him in an attempt to kill the cancer that was poisoning him. Hair gone, weight dropping, body failing. But still waiting, still believing his father would come home. God, Marcus said to the stars, to the universe, to whatever was listening. I know I don't pray much, haven't in years, but if you're there, if you're listening, please, keep Eric alive. Just long enough for me to get home. That's all I ask, just long enough. The stars didn't answer, they never did. Marcus went back to his vehicle, pulled out his maps, reviewed the plan one more time. Routes, phase lines, objectives, all the mechanical details of war, all the things that made sense. That could be controlled. That followed rules. Unlike cancer. Unlike death. Unlike time running out while you were thousands of miles away doing your duty. 5 hours now until H hour. Marcus checked his gear, his weapon, his radio, his maps. Everything ready, everything prepared, everything except his heart. That was still in Houston, in a hospital room, with a 19-year-old boy who believed his father would come home in time. The eastern sky began to lighten. Dawn coming. The last dawn before the war. Marcus wondered if Eric could see the same dawn, if he was awake, if he was in pain, if Catherine was with him, holding his hand, telling him his father would be there soon. He wondered a lot of things, but wondering didn't change anything, didn't stop the war, didn't cure cancer, didn't turn back time and let him make different choices. The radio crackled, final checks, status reports, confirmations. The machine of war grinding into motion, unstoppable, inevitable. Marcus climbed into his Humvee. Doc Washington was already there checking the radio equipment. "Morning, sir," Doc said. "Sleep at all?" "No. Me neither. Never do before a fight." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from years of serving together, the kind where words aren't necessary. Finally, Doc spoke. "Sir, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking about your boy, thinking you should be there instead of here, thinking you made the wrong choice. Am I wrong?" "I don't know, sir. Nobody knows. That's the hell of it. We make our choices, and we live with them, and we don't get to see what would have happened if we'd chosen different. So what do? You do your job. You bring these soldiers home, and you hope like hell that when you get back, your boy is still there waiting. That's all any of us can do." The radio came alive, battalion commander's voice. "All Charlie Mike elements, this is Charlie Mike 6. Execute, execute, execute." The invasion had begun. Marcus keyed his handset. "All Charlie Mike elements, this is Charlie Mike 5. You heard the man. Let's go to work." Engines roared to life. 58 M1A2 Abrams tanks, plus support vehicles, began rolling north, toward Iraq, toward combat, toward whatever waited beyond the horizon. Marcus took one last look south, toward Kuwait City, toward the airport, toward the flights that would eventually take him home, toward Houston, toward MD Anderson, toward Eric. "I'm coming, son," he whispered. "Just wait for me. Please, just wait." Then he turned north, put Eric out of his mind, because he had to, because 400 soldiers needed him present and focused and fully committed, because duty demanded it. The column moved into Iraq as the sun rose behind them, painting the desert in shades of gold and orange. Beautiful and terrible, like every choice Marcus had ever made. Like the choice he didn't yet know was coming. The choice that would define the rest of his life. The choice between saving soldiers and saving his son. The choice he would have to make in Mosul 20 months later, on a night when impossible became reality and promises became lies. But that was still ahead, still waiting, still unknown. For now, Marcus had a war to fight, a mission to complete, soldiers to lead. For now, that had to be enough. Behind him, the sun continued rising. In Houston, Eric watched that same sunrise through a hospital window, believing, trusting, waiting. Time was running out. Marcus just didn't know how fast. April 9th, 2003. Baghdad had fallen. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Donovan stood in the turret of his command vehicle, watching smoke rise from a dozen fires across the city. The statue of Saddam Hussein had come down 3 hours earlier. Iraqis had danced in the streets. American flags had been waved. The cameras had captured it all. Victory, swift and total, just like the planners had promised. Marcus felt nothing. 51 days since he'd left Houston. 51 days since he'd held Eric's letter in his hands and promised to come home. 51 days of combat operations, of leading his battalion through the invasion, of making decisions that kept soldiers alive. 51 days of not knowing if his son was still alive. Communication had been sporadic. Satellite phone calls when they were available, which wasn't often. Email when they had connectivity, which was rare. Marcus had managed 3 calls to Catherine in 7 weeks, each one shorter than the last, each one filled with things neither of them wanted to say. The last call had been 5 days ago. Catherine's voice had been flat, exhausted, defeated. The cancer spread to his brain, she'd said. No preamble, no softening the blow, just the truth, delivered like a rifle shot. They started radiation 2 days ago. Marcus, he's not doing well. Marcus had been standing in a dusty Iraqi town whose name he couldn't remember, surrounded by tanks and soldiers and the organized chaos of an army at war. The phone had felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. How long, he'd asked. Doctors won't say. Could be months, could be weeks. I'll request emergency leave. I'll come home. Will you? Catherine's voice had gone cold. Or will something else come up? Another mission? Another emergency? Another reason why the army needs you more than your son does. That's not fair. Fair. Catherine had laughed. A bitter sound. You want to talk about fair? Eric asked me yesterday if you were coming home. I didn't know what to tell him, so I lied. I said yes. I said you'd be home soon, because I couldn't tell him the truth. What truth? That you chose this. That you chose to be there instead of here. That when it came down to it, you picked the mission over him, over us, over everything. Over. The line had gone silent except for the sound of Catherine crying. Then she'd hung up. Marcus hadn't called back. Told himself it was because satellite time was limited. Told himself she needed space. Told himself a lot of things. None of them true. Now he stood in conquered Baghdad, victorious and hollow, while his son died 3,000 miles away. Doc Washington climbed up beside him. The old sergeant's face was lined with dust and fatigue. 60 days of combat operations had aged everyone, but Doc looked ancient now, like Moses after 40 years in the desert. Sir, battalion commander wants to see you. Says we got new orders. Marcus nodded, climbed down from the vehicle. His legs were stiff. Everything hurt. 49 years old and feeling 70. The battalion commander's track was parked in the shade of a bombed-out building. Colonel Richard Harrison, 53, West Point, Gulf War veteran. A good officer, fair, competent. The kind of commander soldiers respected. Marcus saluted. Harrison returned it. XO, we've got a problem. Division is standing up provisional military police units. They need officers with combat experience to run security operations in the city. I'm tasking you. Marcus felt something sink in his chest. Sir, I was hoping to request emergency leave. My son... I know about your son, Marcus. Harrison's voice softened. And I'm sorry, I truly am. But the war isn't over. It's just changing. These people need structure, security. We can't just conquer a country and leave it in chaos. With respect, my son is dying. I know. And if I would spare you, I would. But I can't. You're my best officer. These provisional units need leadership. Good leadership. The kind that keeps soldiers alive and civilians safe. Harrison paused. I can get you out of here in 6 months. Maybe 4 if things stabilize fast. That's the best I can do. 6 months, maybe 4. Eric might not have 6 months, might not have 6 weeks. Marcus opened his mouth to argue, to demand, to pull rank or beg or do whatever it took to get on a plane home. But the words didn't come, because Harrison was right. The mission wasn't over. The war had just shifted from conventional operations to something messier, something that needed experienced officers who knew how to handle chaos. Officers like Marcus. Understood, sir, Marcus heard himself say. Harrison's expression showed relief mixed with regret. Thank you, XO. I'll get you home as soon as I can. That's a promise. Another promise, another commitment made by well-meaning people who had no control over whether they could keep it. Marcus saluted, walked back to his vehicle. Doc was waiting. Let me guess, Doc said. They're keeping you here. 4 to 6 months. Doc shook his head slowly. Sir, you got to learn to say no. To a direct order from my battalion commander? To yourself, you got to learn to say no to this part of you that thinks the mission always comes first. That thinks duty means sacrifice. Because sacrifice is fine when it's your comfort or your safety or your career. But when it's your family, when it's your boy, that's not sacrifice, sir. That's just wrong. Marcus felt anger flare. You think I don't know that? You think I want to be here instead of with Eric? I think you feel guilty either way, Doc said quietly. So you choose the guilt you're used to, the guilt of being gone because the guilt of letting down your soldiers, of failing your mission? That's newer, that's scarier. So you pick the devil you know. The words hit like physical blows. Marcus wanted to argue, to defend himself, to explain that it wasn't that simple. But it was that simple. Doc had seen right through him, right down to the core of who Marcus Donovan was. A soldier who couldn't say no to the mission, even when saying yes meant losing everything else. What am I supposed to do? Marcus asked. Just leave? Let someone else handle it? Yeah, Doc said. That's exactly what you do. You let someone else handle it. Because there's always another mission, always another crisis, always another reason to stay. But there's only one Eric, and he's running out of time. Marcus looked at the smoking city, at the soldiers moving through the streets, at the chaos that would need months, maybe years to sort out, at the mission that would consume him if he let it. I can't, Marcus whispered. Can't or won't? Does it matter? Doc was quiet for a long moment. Then he clapped Marcus on the shoulder, a gentle gesture, almost fatherly. It matters to Eric, sir. It'll matter to you too. Later, when it's too late to change anything, it'll matter then. Doc walked away, left Marcus standing alone in the Baghdad heat, surrounded by the wreckage of a fallen regime and the ruins of his own choices. Marcus pulled out Eric's letter. Read it again. The paper was worn now, creased from being folded and unfolded hundreds of times. Some of the words were smudged from sweat or rain or maybe tears. I'll wait for you, Eric had written. Marcus folded the letter, put it back over his heart. I'm sorry, son, he whispered. I'm so sorry. But sorry didn't change anything. Sorry didn't get him on a plane. Sorry didn't cure cancer or turn back time or make different choices possible. Sorry was just another word, another empty promise, another way of saying too little, too late. The sun beat down on Baghdad. The fires burned. The war continued. And Marcus Donovan stayed. Because that's what soldiers did, what leaders did, what he always did. He stayed and told himself it was the right choice, the necessary choice, the only choice. He told himself a lot of things. None of them made him feel any better. Chapter 6, The Occupation. Summer 2004, 15 months after the invasion. The war everyone thought was over had become something else entirely. Insurgency, guerrilla warfare, IEDs hidden in trash piles and dead animals. Ambushes from windows and rooftops, a faceless enemy that melted into the civilian population after every attack. This wasn't the war Marcus had trained for. This wasn't about tank battles and clear objectives and enemy forces you could identify and destroy. This was about survival, about getting through each day without losing someone, about making impossible decisions in an environment where right and wrong had become blurred beyond recognition. Marcus was 50 now, lieutenant colonel, still serving as XO, but the battalion had rotated through 3 commanders in the past year. Casualties, burnout, the grinding stress of urban combat that wore men down like sandpaper on steel. He should have been home by now. Harrison's promise of 4 to 6 months had turned into 16. Orders kept changing, extensions kept coming. The Army needed experienced officers. The mission kept expanding. Just a little longer, just a few more months. Always just a few more months. Marcus had stopped requesting leave after the sixth denial. What was the point? They weren't going to let him go. Not while Iraq was bleeding, not while soldiers were dying, not while the mission still needed him. Catherine had stopped answering his calls after month 10. Marcus didn't blame her. What could he possibly say that would matter? What words existed that could bridge the gap between Baghdad and Houston, between duty and love, between the choice he'd made and the consequences he was living? He got updates from Catherine's sister, brief emails, clinical, factual. Eric started a new chemotherapy protocol. Doctor's hopeful. Eric's counts are down, back in hospital. Eric asking about you, told him you're busy. Eric stopped asking. That last one had been 6 months ago. Eric had stopped asking about his father, had stopped waiting, had stopped believing the promises. Marcus told himself it was better that way. Less disappointment, less pain. Better for Eric to let go now than keep hoping for something that wouldn't happen. He told himself a lot of things. None of them helped him sleep at night. The IED hit on a Tuesday morning in July. Charlie Company, 1st Platoon, conducting a routine patrol in East Baghdad. 4 Humvees, 16 soldiers. The blast took out the lead vehicle, flipped it completely over. The truck burned for 40 minutes before they could get close enough to extract the bodies. 3 KIA, 2 wounded so badly they'd never serve again. 19-year-old kids who joined the army to pay for college and ended up scattered across an Iraqi street. Marcus had to write the letters to their families. Had to find words to explain why their sons and daughters weren't coming home. Had to make death sound noble and sacrifice sound meaningful. He hated every word he wrote. Captain Jake Morrison came to his office after the memorial service. Jake was 30 now, still commanding Alpha Company, still alive, still fighting, but he looked 20 years older than when they'd crossed into Iraq. The eager young officer was gone. In his place was a hard man with tired eyes and a permanent tension in his jaw. "Sir, I need to talk to you," Jake said. Marcus gestured to a chair. "What's on your mind?" "Tyler." Jake's son, 5 years old now. Marcus had seen photos. Cute kid, big smile. "What about him?" "He doesn't remember me." Jake's voice cracked. "I called home last week. Got to do a video call. Tyler looked at the screen and asked my wife who that man was. She said it was Daddy. He said no, Daddy is the picture on the wall. This man is different." Marcus didn't know what to say. What comfort could he possibly offer? What wisdom did he have about children who forgot their fathers? "I've been here 19 months, Jake continued. 19 months. He was 3.5 when I left. He's 5 now. I missed his 4th birthday, his first day of kindergarten. Everything. And now he doesn't even recognize me. He's young. When you get home." "When, sir? They keep extending us. Keep finding reasons we need to stay. My wife says if I don't come home soon, Tyler's going to forget I exist. And you know what? I think she's right. I think I've been gone so long that I'm not his father anymore. I'm just a picture on the wall." Marcus thought about Eric, about how long it had been since they'd spoken, about how Eric had stopped asking about him, about how maybe Eric had already forgotten him too. "What do you want me to do?" Marcus asked. "Tell me it's worth it." Jake leaned forward. "Tell me that what we're doing here matters enough to lose my son over. Tell me that these missions and patrols and all this blood and death adds up to something that justifies Tyler growing up without a father." Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, tried to find the words. They wouldn't come. Because what could he say? That the mission was vital? That they were protecting America? That sacrifices had to be made? All of it was true. All of it was meaningless. Because no mission, no matter how important, was worth losing your child over. No victory could compensate for that defeat. "I can't tell you that," Marcus said quietly. "I wish I could, but I can't." Jake nodded slowly. "Then why are we still here?" "Because we're soldiers. Because our oaths didn't come with caveats. Because someone has to stay, and someone has to fight, and someone has to carry the weight. And our children? What about them? They carry a different weight. The weight of having fathers who chose duty over presence, who picked mission over family, who convinced themselves that serving their country meant abandoning their homes." Jake stood up. "Sir, permission to speak freely?" "Granted." That's the biggest load of self-justifying horseshit I've ever heard. We're not heroes. We're just men who can't say no, who are too afraid of disappointing our commanders to stand up for our families, who hide behind words like duty and honor because we don't have the courage to choose what really matters. The words hung in the air between them, true and terrible. You're right, Marcus said. Jake blinked, surprised. Sir? You're absolutely right about all of it. We are hiding, we are afraid, and we are losing our children because we're too weak to say no. Then why don't we? Because it's too late. Because the choice was already made. Because even if we went home tomorrow, we can't get back the years we lost. Can't undo the damage. Can't make our children remember us. Marcus looked at Jake. But you still have a chance. Tyler is 5. You can still fix this. How? Request transfer. Stateside assignment. Tell them you're done. Take the career hit. Take the consequences. But go home before your son forgets you exist. Jake shook his head. I can't leave my company. They need me. They'll get another commander. Commander, someone else will lead them. But Tyler will never get another father. You're it. And if you don't go home now, you'll end up like me. 50 years old, alone. With a son who stopped asking about you because he learned that asking just leads to disappointment. Jake stood there for a long moment, thinking, weighing, facing the same choice Marcus had faced 2 years ago. Choose the mission or choose the son. Choose duty or choose love. Choose what you've always done or choose something different. I'll think about it, sir, Jake said finally. He left. Marcus sat alone in his office. The walls were covered with maps and duty rosters and casualty reports. The detritus of command. The evidence of a life spent in service. A life that felt increasingly empty. His phone rang. The satellite phone. Marcus almost didn't answer. Almost let it go to voicemail because he knew it wouldn't be Catherine. Knew it wouldn't be Eric. Knew it would just be another mission. Another crisis. Another reason to stay. But he answered. Because soldiers always answer. This is Donovan. Marcus, Catherine's voice. Quiet. Strained. Marcus's heart stopped. What happened? You need to come home, now. Is he? He's alive, barely. The doctors say maybe 3 weeks, maybe less. Marcus, if you're going to see him before he dies, you need to come now. I'll request emergency leave. I'll be on the next flight. Will you? Catherine's voice hardened. How many times have you said that? How many promises have you made? This time is different. That's what you always say. And it's never different. It's always the same. The mission comes first. The army comes first. Everything comes first except your son. Catherine, please. Please what? Please believe you this time? Please give you another chance? Please tell Eric that his father really is coming, even though he's never come before? Catherine's voice broke. He gave up on you, Marcus. He gave up on you months ago. But I kept hoping, kept thinking maybe this time you'd choose us. Maybe this time you'd prove me wrong. I will, I promise. I'll be there. No, you won't. Because even now, even knowing he's dying, you're already thinking about how to balance it, how to serve both, how to keep the mission going while making a quick trip home. But you can't do both, Marcus. You never could. And it's taken me 20 years to accept that. The line went quiet. Marcus could hear her breathing, hear the tears she was trying to hide. I filed for divorce, Catherine said. Papers are being sent to your command. I'm sorry, Marcus. I loved you. Part of me still does. But I can't do this anymore. I can't watch you choose wrong and pretend it's noble. I can't lie to our son anymore. I can't lie to myself. Catherine, wait. Goodbye, Marcus. I hope you find whatever you're looking for in Baghdad. I hope it's worth what you paid for it. She hung up. Marcus sat holding the dead phone. Outside his office, the war continued. Soldiers moved through the halls. Radios crackled. The machinery of military operations ground forward with mechanical precision. Inside, Marcus Donovan sat alone with the wreckage of his life and the weight of choices that could never be undone. Chapter 7. The Mosul Decision. January 15, 2005. Forward Operating Base Marez, Mosul, Iraq. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Donovan stood in the operations center, looking at maps of the most dangerous city in the country. He was still XO, still waiting for his battalion command slot. The promotion to colonel would have to wait. Right now, he had other concerns. Mosul was bleeding. 5 to 10 attacks per day. IEDs, ambushes, suicide bombers. The insurgency had turned this ancient city into a killing ground. Marcus's battalion was tasked with security operations in the eastern sector. 1,300 square kilometers of urban terrain, 400,000 civilians. And somewhere mixed in with them, thousands of insurgents who wanted every American dead. It was an impossible mission. But then again, all the missions were impossible now. Marcus was 51, gray in his hair, lines in his face that hadn't been there 2 years ago. A permanent tiredness behind his eyes that no amount of sleep could fix. Eric had died on November 9th, 2004, 2 months and 6 days ago. Marcus had not made it home in time. The emergency leave had been approved. Marcus had been scheduled on a flight out of Baghdad on November 6th, 3 days before Eric passed. Plenty of time. Then Charlie Company had been ambushed in Mosul, 4 wounded. The medevac helicopter had taken fire. The company commander had been killed. The company was pinned down and taking casualties. Marcus had made a decision, delayed his flight, led the rescue operation himself, extracted Charlie Company, saved 11 soldiers. By the time he got to Baghdad for his rescheduled flight, Eric was on life support. By the time he landed in Houston, Eric was gone. Catherine had not been at the funeral. Her sister had been there, had handed Marcus a letter. From Eric, written 2 weeks before he died. Marcus carried that letter now, in the same pocket where he'd carried the first one, over his heart. Always. He hadn't read it, couldn't bring himself to open it, because he knew what it would say. Knew Eric would be kind, would forgive him, would tell him it was okay. And that would destroy him completely. So the letter stayed sealed, carried but unread, a weight on his chest that never lifted, a reminder of the choice he'd made. Saved 11 soldiers, lost 1 son. The math didn't work, never would. "Sir, you've got a visitor." Marcus turned. His operations officer, Major Sarah Brennan, stood in the doorway, behind her a familiar face. Brian Castellano, captain now, 29 years old, tank company commander in 3rd Battalion. "Captain Castellano, what can I do for you?" Marcus asked. "Sir, I need to request a mission change. My company is scheduled for a convoy movement tomorrow, route Predator to FOB Patriot, but the route is compromised. 3 IEDs found last week. Insurgent activity is high. I think we should delay." Marcus looked at the map. Route Predator, 23 kilometers of highway cutting through East Mosul. Narrow streets in places, overlooked by buildings, multiple choke points. A nightmare route, but also the most direct path to FOB Patriot, which needed the supplies Castellano's company was hauling. "What's your recommendation?" Marcus asked. "Delay 48 hours. Let EOD sweep the route again. Wait for the insurgent activity to die down. FOB Patriot needs those supplies. They're running low on fuel and ammunition. We delay, we put them at risk. We don't delay, we put my soldiers at risk. Sir, I've got 43 men in that convoy. I can't guarantee I'll bring them all back if we use that route tomorrow." Marcus studied the young captain. Saw himself 20 years ago. Eager, competent, trying to balance mission and safety, trying to make the right call. "You can never guarantee you'll bring them all back," Marcus said quietly. "That's the burden of command. You make the best decision you can with the information you have. But people still die. Good decisions, bad decisions. Sometimes it doesn't matter. People still die." Castellano looked uncomfortable. "Sir, are you saying I should run the convoy?" Marcus thought about Eric, about the choice he'd made, about 11 soldiers saved and 1 son lost, about the math that never worked. "I'm saying there's no perfect answer. You choose wrong or you choose wrong differently, but you still choose, and you live with it." Marcus turned back to the map. "Request approved. Delay the convoy 48 hours. I'll explain it to division." Castellano looked relieved. "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me. Thank me in 48 hours when your convoy gets hit anyway because the insurgents just moved their IEDs to the new date." Castellano left. Major Brennan came over. "Sir, that was unusual advice for a company commander." "What was?" "Telling him that all choices are wrong. That's not exactly inspiring leadership." Marcus shrugged. "It is honest leadership, and honesty is all I have left." His satellite phone buzzed. Text message from Catherine's sister. "Marcus, Catherine asked me to tell you that she's selling the house, moving to Virginia to be closer to family. She found some of Eric's things while packing. His journals, his letters, things he wanted you to have. She's sending them to your command. Thought you should know." Marcus stared at the message. Eric's journals. More words from a dead son to an absent father. More evidence of everything he'd missed. Everything he'd chosen to miss. He put the phone away, looked at the map of Mosul, at the routes marked in red where attacks had occurred, at the FOBs marked with blue flags where soldiers lived and fought and died, at the war that never ended, the mission that never stopped demanding, the duty that consumed everything. Sir? Major Brennan was looking at him with concern. Are you okay? No, Marcus said. I'm not. I haven't been okay in 20 years. But I'm still here, still standing, still commanding, because that's what we do. Maybe you should take some time. Go home. Process everything with your son. I don't have a home anymore. I have this. Marcus gestured at the map. This is all I have. This is all I am. Major Brennan didn't respond. What could she say? What comfort existed for a man who traded his family for a mission and now had neither? The radio crackled. Another attack, another casualty, another crisis requiring immediate attention. Marcus picked up the handset, began issuing orders, coordinating response, being the commander his soldiers needed, being the father he never was. The war continued, as it always did, as it always would. And Marcus Donovan stood in the operations center, surrounded by maps and radios and the machinery of war, alone with his choices and his ghosts and the unread letter that burned in his pocket like a brand. 3 weeks later, the impossible choice would come, the moment that would define everything, the night when he would have to decide between saving soldiers and keeping a promise to his dead son. But that was still ahead, still waiting, still unknown. For now, Marcus had a battalion to command, a mission to complete, a war to fight. For now, that had to be enough, even though it never was, even though it never would be. Chapter 8, The Night of Choices. August 12th, 2005. 2200 hours, 9 months since Eric died. Marcus sat in his office, the package from Catherine's sister on his desk. He'd been staring at it for 3 hours, hadn't opened it, couldn't bring himself to. Inside were Eric's journals, his letters, his drawings, the accumulated evidence of a life Marcus had barely been part of, the record of a son who'd grown up in his father's absence, the record of Marcus's failure. Outside, the fob was settling into its nightly rhythm. Guard shifts changing, maintenance crews working on vehicles, the constant hum of generators powering the lights that turned night into perpetual twilight. Mosul never truly slept, neither did the soldiers who patrolled it. Marcus finally reached for the package, cut the tape, opened it. On top was a photograph. Eric at 17, before the cancer, before the diagnosis that would kill him. Smiling, healthy, full of life and possibility. A stranger to Marcus, a boy he'd never really known. Beneath the photo, journals, 5 of them, spiral-bound notebooks filled with Eric's handwriting. Marcus opened the first one, dated from 2001. Eric would have been 17. The first entry was simple, direct, devastating. Dad deployed again today. Mom cried, I didn't. I'm tired of crying over someone who's never here anyway. Maybe it's easier this way. Easier to just accept that I don't have a father, that I never really did, that the man in the pictures and the voice on the phone isn't real. He's just a ghost, a memory of someone who was never really present to begin with. Marcus closed the journal. Couldn't read more. Not yet. Not when every word was a knife twisting in his chest. His phone rang. Operations Center. Major Brennan's voice was tense. Sir, we have a situation. Blue Platoon, Castellano's company. They're in contact, heavy contact, multiple casualties. They need immediate QRF. Marcus was on his feet before she finished. Where? Grid November Victor 478321, near Mosul University. They were conducting a night patrol, got ambushed at a traffic circle. 2 vehicles disabled. 4 wounded. They're pinned down. Marcus grabbed his gear. Spin up the QRF. I want 6 vehicles ready to roll in 5 minutes. Sir, you don't need to lead this yourself. I can... 5 minutes, Major. That's an order. Marcus ran to the motor pool. His driver, Specialist Rodriguez, was already starting the Humvee. Doc Washington appeared from nowhere, climbing into the back seat. Thought you might need a medic, sir, Doc said. You're 56 years old and retired. And you're 51 and about to do something stupid. Figure we cancel each other out. Other vehicles were rolling up. Captain Jake Morrison in the lead Humvee. He'd stayed in Iraq after all. Hadn't gone home to Tyler, had made the same choice Marcus always made. Choose the mission, choose the soldiers, choose duty over everything else. The convoy rolled out into the Mosul night. The city was dark except for fires burning in trash piles and the occasional streetlight that still worked. Buildings loomed on both sides, windows like dead eyes watching them pass. Perfect ambush terrain. Marcus knew it. Every soldier in the convoy knew it. But Blue Platoon was dying out there. And when soldiers were dying, you went. Simple as that. Marcus's radio crackled. Castellano's voice, strained, frightened, young. Lancer 6, this is Blue 1. We are taking heavy fire, RPGs, small arms. At least 20 hostiles, maybe more. We need that QRF now. Blue 1, Lancer 6, ETA 7 minutes. Hold on. Sir, we've got 4 wounded, 1 critical. He's not going to make 7 minutes. Marcus keyed his radio. Blue 1, do what you can. We're coming. They drove faster, too fast for safety, but safety was a luxury they didn't have. Every second counted. Every delay meant someone bleeding out in the street. Then Marcus's satellite phone rang. He almost didn't answer, almost ignored it because he was in the middle of a mission, in the middle of a crisis, in the middle of doing what he always did. But something made him look at the caller ID. Catherine's sister. Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. She wouldn't call unless it was important, wouldn't interrupt unless it was urgent. He answered, "This is Marcus." "Marcus, it's Linda. I'm at the cemetery, at Eric's grave. Catherine asked me to come, to read something to him, something she found in his journals. She thought you should hear it too." "Linda, I'm in the middle of a—" I know you are always in the middle of something, but please, just listen, for Eric." Marcus looked ahead. 5 minutes to Blue Platoon. 5 minutes to the soldiers who needed him. "Make it quick," he said. Linda's voice came through the phone, reading words Eric had written before he died. "August 1st, 2005. The doctors say I have maybe 2 weeks, maybe less. Mama's with me all the time now. She tries to be strong, but I can see her breaking. She keeps saying Dad will come home soon, that he promised. But I know better. I've known for years. Dad isn't coming home. He's always somewhere else, always saving someone else, always choosing someone else. I used to be angry about it, used to hate him for it. But I'm not angry anymore. I'm just sad. Sad that he'll never know me, never really know who I was, what I cared about, what I dreamed. He'll have memories of a little boy. But the man I became, the person I was, he'll never know that person. And that's the saddest part. Not that he wasn't here, but that he missed me, the real me. And now it's too late. Now I'm dying, and he's somewhere far away saving people who aren't his son. I hope it's worth it. I hope whatever he's doing is important enough to miss this, to miss me, to miss everything. Because if it's not, if he realizes someday that he traded knowing his son for a mission that didn't really matter, that's going to destroy him, and I don't want that. Despite everything, I don't want my father to suffer. So I hope it was worth it. I really do." Linda stopped reading. The phone was silent except for her breathing. "Marcus, Catherine wanted you to know, wanted you to understand what Eric was thinking at the end. She thought maybe it would help you." Help him. The word was almost funny, as if anything could help, as if any words could undo the choices made, the time lost, the son who died alone. Marcus looked ahead. 3 minutes to Blue Platoon now. 3 minutes to the soldiers who needed him, who depended on him, who would die without him. "I have to go," Marcus said. "Marcus, wait, there's more. Catherine wanted me to tell you." Marcus hung up, put the phone away, focused on the mission, on the convoy, on the soldiers dying ahead. Because that's what he did. That's what he always did. Put the mission first, put the soldiers first, put everyone before his family. Even now, even with Eric's words ringing in his ears, even knowing what it cost, he chose the mission. 2 minutes, Marcus said over the radio. "All vehicles prepare for contact." They rounded the corner, saw the disabled Humvees, saw the muzzle flashes from the surrounding buildings, saw Blue Platoon pinned down, returning fire, fighting for their lives. Marcus's training took over. Alpha Team, suppress left building. Bravo Team, suppress right. Charlie Team, recovery operations. Move, move, move. The QRF vehicles split up, coordinated, professional, executing the rescue with precision born of years of training and months of combat. Marcus's vehicle pulled up beside Castellano's position. The young captain was bleeding from a shrapnel wound to his shoulder, but he was still fighting, still leading, still trying to save his men. "Sir, you came," Castellano said, relief evident in his voice. "Always," Marcus said. "Get your wounded loaded. We're leaving." They worked fast, loading casualties, suppressing enemy fire, creating enough chaos to break contact and withdraw. It took 20 minutes, 20 minutes of controlled violence, 20 minutes of soldiers doing what they were trained to do. When it was over, they'd extracted Blue Platoon. All of them. 8 soldiers saved. 4 wounded but alive. 0 KIA. Success by any measure. Lives preserved. Mission accomplished. Everything Marcus had trained his entire career to do. They drove back to the FOB in the pre-dawn darkness. Marcus sat in his vehicle, surrounded by soldiers he'd just saved, and felt nothing. No pride, no satisfaction, no sense of accomplishment. Just emptiness. Vast and hollow. A void where his heart should have been. Because Eric's words kept echoing in his mind. I hope it was worth it. I hope whatever he's doing is important enough to miss this, to miss me, to miss everything. Was it worth it? Had saving 8 soldiers justified missing his son's entire life? Had tonight's rescue balanced against 19 years of absence? The math didn't work, would never work. 8 soldiers saved, 1 son lost forever. The equation was impossible. The cost incalculable. They reached the FOB as the sun was rising. Marcus climbed out of his vehicle. His legs felt like lead. Everything hurt. Not from the mission, from the weight of carrying choices that could never be undone. Doc Washington came over, looked at Marcus with those ancient eyes that had seen too much. You okay, sir? I saved them, Marcus said. All of them. They're all going home. That's good. Is it? Is it good that they're going home when my son never got his father to come home? Is it good that I saved 8 strangers and couldn't save the one person who actually mattered? Doc was quiet for a long moment. Sir, you can't think like that. You did your job. You did it well. Those 8 soldiers are alive because of you. And Eric is dead because of me. Because I chose this. Because I always choose this. Because I can't seem to help myself. That's not fair. Eric died of cancer. That wasn't your fault. No, but missing his life was my fault. Missing his death was my fault. Choosing to be here instead of there was my fault. All of it. Every moment I wasn't there. Every promise I broke. Every time I picked the mission over him. That was all me. That was all my choice. Marcus walked to his office, sat at his desk, looked at the open journal, at Eric's words written in neat handwriting, at the evidence of a life he'd never known. His phone buzzed, text from Linda. Catherine wanted me to finish. Eric wrote something else. At the very end, after that entry, he wrote, "Tell Dad I forgive him. Tell him I understand. Tell him I hope he finds peace. Tell him I love him. Tell him it's okay. Tell him not to carry this. Tell him to let go. Your son, Eric." Marcus read it 3 times. Then he closed the journal, put his head in his hands, and finally, after 9 months of holding it in, after a lifetime of being strong, after decades of never breaking, he cried. Cried for the son he'd lost, for the years he'd wasted, for the choices he couldn't undo, for the man he'd been and the father he'd never become. Cried until there was nothing left, until he was empty, hollow, done. When he finally stopped, the sun was fully up. A new day had begun. The war continued. Soldiers moved through the FOB. Missions awaited. The machinery of military operations ground forward with relentless momentum. And Marcus Donovan sat in his office, surrounded by his dead son's words, and understood finally what he'd always known, but never admitted. He'd made the wrong choice. Every time, for 20 years, had chosen wrong and called it duty, had chosen wrong and called it honor, had chosen wrong and told himself it was necessary. But it was just wrong, simple and terrible and unforgivable. Wrong. And no amount of soldiers saved could make it right. No amount of missions accomplished could balance the scales. No amount of years lived could give him back the time he'd lost. It was just wrong, and it would always be wrong, and he would carry that wrongness for the rest of his life. Eric had forgiven him, had told him to let go, had given him permission to find peace. But Marcus knew he never would, knew he didn't deserve peace, knew that the only thing left was to ensure that Eric's death wasn't meaningless, that somehow, some way, the lessons Marcus had learned could help someone else avoid his mistakes, could help someone else choose differently, choose better, choose their family before it was too late. That was all he had left, all he could do, help others avoid his fate, teach them what he'd learned at such terrible cost, teach them the 31st Commandment, the one he'd discovered too late, the one written in his son's blood and his own regrets, the one that said, when faced with impossible choices, choose the people you love. Choose them first. Choose them always. Because missions end, but love doesn't. Because soldiers will forget you, but family won't. Because duty is important, but not more important than the sun waiting for you to come home. Choose love, even when it's hard, even when everyone tells you the mission comes first. Choose love before it's too late, before the only thing left is regret. Marcus picked up a pen, opened a fresh notebook, and began to write the 31st commandment, the one he would teach, the one he would share, the one that had cost him everything to learn, the one he prayed might save someone else from making his mistakes. Outside, the war continued. Inside, Marcus Donovan began the long journey of turning tragedy into wisdom, of making Eric's death mean something, of finding purpose in the ruins of everything he'd lost. It wouldn't be redemption. Nothing could redeem what he'd done, but it might be useful, might help, might save some future father from choosing wrong. That would have to be enough, because it was all he had left. All he would ever have. September 2005, Fort Hood, Texas. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Donovan walked through the gates of the base he'd first reported to 27 years earlier. Back when he'd been a young captain. Back when Eric had been 2 years old. Back when he'd chosen a battalion meeting over taking his son to the zoo. Back when there had still been time to choose differently. The Army had given him 30 days leave after his rotation ended. Mandatory rest, mandatory counseling, mandatory time to process what the counselors called traumatic loss and what Marcus called the natural consequences of his choices. He'd spent the first week in a hotel room in Killeen. Couldn't bring himself to look for an apartment. Couldn't bring himself to do anything except sit and stare at walls and try to understand how he'd gotten here. 51 years old, divorced, son dead, no home, no family, nothing except a uniform and a chest full of medals that felt like weights around his neck. The second week, he'd started reading Eric's journals. All of them. Cover to cover, every word his son had written from age 13 to 19. Every thought, every feeling, every moment of a life Marcus had missed. It destroyed him, rebuilt him, destroyed him again. But he read them all because he owed Eric that much, owed him the attention he'd never given in life, the presence he'd never provided, the father he'd never been. The journals told a story, a boy growing up in the shadow of an absent father, trying to understand, trying not to be angry, trying to forgive, failing, succeeding, failing again. The messy reality of a child learning to live with disappointment. But there were other things too. Eric's dreams, his hopes, his plans for the future he'd never have. He'd wanted to be a teacher. History. Like his father had taught him tactics and strategy, Eric had wanted to teach kids about the past, about learning from mistakes, about not repeating history's errors. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. Doc Washington found him in week 3, showed up at the hotel with coffee and sandwiches and that patient expression that said he'd sit there all day if necessary. "Sir, you planning to hide in this room forever?" "I'm not hiding, I'm processing." "You're drowning, there's a difference." Doc set the food down. "You read the journals?" "All of them." "And?" "And I understand now. What I did, what it cost, what I can never get back." Doc nodded slowly. "That's good. Understanding is the first step. But understanding alone don't fix nothing. Question is, what are you going to do with it?" Marcus looked at the notebook on the desk, the one where he'd started writing the 31st commandment. 50 pages now, his thoughts, his regrets, his hard-learned lessons. All of it poured out in messy handwriting at 3 in the morning when the ghost wouldn't let him sleep. "I'm going to teach," Marcus said. "Going to make sure no one else makes my mistakes." That's a start, but teaching ain't enough. You gotta live it too. Got to show people it's possible to choose different. "How?" "Eric is gone. Catherine is gone. I don't have anyone left to choose." "Then find someone. There's always someone who needs choosing. Someone who needs a father figure, a mentor, a person who gives a damn. The world is full of people waiting for someone to choose them." Doc stood up, headed for the door, stopped. "Sir, Eric forgave you. Catherine maybe won't ever forgive you, but the real question is whether you're going to forgive yourself. Because if you don't, all this wisdom you're collecting don't mean nothing. It's just pain you're hoarding instead of healing from." He left. Marcus sat alone with his coffee and his journals and his 50 pages of hard-learned lessons. Forgive himself. The words felt impossible, like asking water to flow uphill, like expecting steel to bend without breaking. But maybe that was the point. Maybe forgiveness wasn't about forgetting or excusing. Maybe it was about accepting, about saying, yes, I did this terrible thing. Yes, it cost everything. Yes, I can't undo it. And yes, I still have to find a way to live with myself. Maybe forgiveness was just another word for survival. Marcus picked up his pen, started writing again. Not the 31st commandment this time. A letter to Eric, to the son who couldn't read it, to the ghost that haunted him. Dear Eric, I'm sorry. I know those words mean nothing. I know sorry doesn't bring you back or give us the time we lost. But I need to say it anyway. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I chose wrong. I'm sorry I put everything before you. I'm sorry you died waiting for a father who never came. I'm sorry for all of it. Every moment, every choice, every broken promise. I'm sorry, and I know you forgave me. You wrote it in your journal. You told me to let go, but I don't know how. I don't know how to forgive myself when I can't forget what I did, can't undo it, can't fix it. So instead, I'm going to try to make it mean something. I'm going to teach other fathers what I learned. I'm going to help other soldiers choose better. I'm going to turn my mistakes into lessons and my regrets into wisdom. It won't bring you back, won't make up for what I did. But maybe it'll save someone else from my fate. Maybe some other kid will get the father I never was to you. Maybe that's the best I can do. The only thing I can do. I love you, son. I always did. I just didn't know how to show it. Didn't know how to be what you needed. But I'm learning now. Too late for us, but maybe not too late for someone else. Your father, Marcus. He folded the letter, put it in an envelope, addressed it to Eric's grave, would mail it knowing no one would ever read it, but needing to send it anyway, needing to say the words even if they went nowhere. Outside, the Texas sun blazed down. Life continued. The world turned. People went about their business. They laughed and loved and lived and never knew that Marcus Donovan was sitting in a hotel room writing letters to his dead son and trying to figure out how to survive the consequences of his choices. They didn't need to know. His pain was his own, his burden to carry, his cross to bear. But maybe, just maybe, he could turn that burden into something useful, something that helped, something that mattered. Maybe that was enough, not redemption, not forgiveness, not healing, but purpose, direction, a reason to keep going. Maybe that was all anyone could ask for. Marcus sealed the envelope, put on his uniform, walked out of the hotel room into the bright Texas morning. Time to stop hiding, time to start living, time to turn tragedy into testimony. Time to teach the 31st Commandment. Chapter 10, The Teacher. 2010, Fort Benning, Georgia, the Armor School. Colonel Marcus Donovan, retired, stood in front of a classroom full of young officers, captains, and lieutenants. The future of armored warfare. Bright-eyed and eager and so damn young, Marcus could barely remember being that age. He'd been teaching for 3 years now. After leaving active duty in 2007, the Army had offered him a position as a civilian instructor, teaching tactics, teaching leadership, teaching the lessons written in 40 years of service and paid for in blood and regrets. He'd said yes, because teaching was all he had left. Teaching was how he honored Eric, how he made the loss mean something, how he survived. The classroom was hot, Georgia in July. No air conditioning could quite handle the southern summer. The students looked uncomfortable in their uniforms, shifting in their seats, waiting for the lesson to begin. Marcus had taught this particular class 24 times. Introduction to Armored Leadership, the first class every new armor officer took, the foundation for everything else. Usually he taught tactics, movement techniques, fire and maneuver, the mechanical aspects of commanding tanks in combat. Today he was teaching something different. Gentlemen, Marcus began, and ladies, how many of you are married? About half the hands went up. How many have children? Fewer hands, maybe a third. How many of you think you can have a successful military career and a successful family life at the same time? All the hands went up, every single one, the confidence of youth, the certainty that they would be different, that they would find the balance, that they could have it all. Marcus remembered feeling that way. Long ago, before he learned better. You're wrong, Marcus said quietly. Not all of you, but most of you. Most of you will have to choose. Career or family, mission or home. And most of you will choose the mission. Because that's what we're trained to do. That's what the Army teaches us. That's what gets you promoted and praised and decorated. Choosing the mission. Putting duty first. sacrificing everything for the greater good. The students looked uncomfortable now. This wasn't what they'd expected. This wasn't the patriotic speech about honor and service. This was something else, something harder, something true. I'm going to tell you a story, Marcus continued, about a soldier who made all the right career choices and all the wrong life choices. A soldier who spent 40 years serving his country and lost everything that mattered in the process. That soldier was me. He told them about Eric, about the zoo trip he'd missed, about the birthdays and school plays and soccer games, about choosing battalion meetings and training exercises and deployments over being present for his son. He told them about the cancer diagnosis, about the choice to deploy instead of stay, about the promise to come home that he couldn't keep. He told them about November 2004, about the rescue mission that delayed his flight, about arriving at the hospital 6 hours after Eric died. The classroom was silent, absolutely silent. Some of the students looked shocked. Some looked sad. Some looked like they were rethinking their entire careers. Good, that was the point. Eric left me his journals, Marcus said. And in those journals, he wrote something I want to read to you. He pulled out a worn piece of paper. Eric's words, copied and carried and read so many times the paper was nearly transparent. He wrote, "I hope whatever Dad is doing is important enough to miss this, to miss me, to miss everything. Because if it's not, if he realizes someday that he traded knowing his son for a mission that didn't really matter, that's going to destroy him." Marcus folded the paper, put it away. Eric was right, it did destroy me, because I realized too late that no mission was worth missing my son's life. No operation was worth losing my family. No promotion or medal or achievement could compensate for not being there when he needed me. Marcus walked to the board, picked up a marker, wrote in large letters, "The 31st Commandment. When faced with impossible choices, choose the people you love. Choose them first. Choose them always." He underlined it twice. "You're going to face impossible choices in your careers," Marcus said. "Moments when duty and love conflict. When the mission and your family pull in opposite directions. When you have to decide between being a good soldier and being a good father, or mother, or spouse. And everyone around you will tell you the mission comes first. Your commanders, your peers, your training, all of it designed to make you choose duty." Marcus looked at each student, making eye contact, making sure they understood. "I'm telling you something different. I'm telling you that when that moment comes, when you have to choose your family, choose your children, choose being there over being deployed, choose presence over promotion, choose love over duty. Because missions end, but love doesn't. Because the Army will replace you in a heartbeat, but your children never will. Because at the end of your life, at the end of everything, no one remembers the missions. They remember whether you were there, whether you showed up, whether you chose them." A hand went up. Young lieutenant, maybe 25, earnest face. "Sir, with respect, doesn't that contradict everything we're taught? Doesn't that go against our oaths? Our duty to defend the nation?" "Yes," Marcus said simply. "It does. And that's the tragedy. The Army will ask you to sacrifice your family for your service. We'll praise you for it. We'll promote you for it. We'll tell you it's necessary and noble and right. But it's not. It's just loss. And if you're not careful, if you don't set boundaries, if you don't learn to say no, you'll end up like me. Successful career, empty life, nothing left except regrets and ghosts." Another hand, female captain, early 30s. "Sir, are you saying we should leave the Army? That we can't serve and have families?" "No, I'm saying you have to be smarter than I was. You have to learn to balance. You have to learn that not every mission requires you. That sometimes good enough is good enough. That someone else can handle it. That the Army will survive without you for one deployment, one TDY, one field exercise. But your children won't survive without you. Not in the ways that matter, not in the ways that shape who they become." Marcus paused. Let the words sink in. "I'm not telling you not to serve. I'm telling you to serve wisely, to serve with your eyes open, to serve while protecting what matters most. Because if you lose your family in service to your country, you haven't sacrificed for the greater good. You've just sacrificed, period. And that sacrifice doesn't make you a hero, it makes you a cautionary tale." The class ended. The students filed out slowly. Some looked troubled, some looked thoughtful, some looked angry. That was fine. Marcus wasn't there to make them comfortable. He was there to make them think. One student stayed behind, a young captain, maybe 28, wedding ring on his finger. "Sir, I'm deploying in 3 weeks. Afghanistan, my wife is pregnant with our first child, due in 5 months. I requested to delay the deployment until after the birth. Got denied. What do I do?" Marcus looked at this young officer. Saw himself 30 years ago. Same situation, same choice, same certainty that duty mattered more than presence. "What do you want to do?" Marcus asked. "I want to be there when my child is born, but I also don't want to let my soldiers down. Don't want to be the guy who shirked his duty because of family." "Let me ask you something. What's your name?" "David Chen, sir." David Chen. Marcus felt something click into place. This was important. This moment mattered. "Captain Chen, if you deploy, miss the birth, and something happens during delivery, could you forgive yourself?" Chen was quiet, thinking. "I don't know, sir." "The answer is no, you couldn't. I know because I tried. I tried for 20 years to forgive myself for the moments I missed, for the choices I made. It doesn't work. You can rationalize it. You can explain it. You can tell yourself it was necessary, but you can't forgive it. Not really. Not deep down where it matters. So what do I do? You fight. You go up your chain of command. You request again. You make them understand that this isn't negotiable, that you will be there for your child's birth, that the mission can wait 1 month, but your child's birth cannot. And if they still say no, you resign your commission. You get out. You choose your family." Chen looked shocked. "Sir, you're telling me to quit the army?" "I'm telling you to choose what matters. If the army matters more than your child, deploy. But if your child matters more, stay. It's that simple and that hard." Chen nodded slowly. "Thank you, sir. I'll think about it." He left. Marcus stood alone in the empty classroom, looking at the 31st Commandment written on the board. Words he'd learned too late to save his own family, but maybe not too late to save someone else's. That night, in his small apartment off base, Marcus added a note to his journal. "Met a young captain today, David Chen, facing the same choice I faced. I told him what I should have done, what I hope he'll do. Choose family, choose presence, choose love. I pray he listens. I pray he's smarter than I was. I pray he doesn't learn these lessons the way I did." Marcus closed the journal, looked at the photograph of Eric on his desk. 19 years old, smiling, forever young, forever gone. "I'm trying, son," Marcus whispered. "I'm trying to make it mean something. Trying to help others avoid my mistakes. I hope that's enough. I hope you'd be proud." The photograph didn't answer. It never did. But Marcus liked to think Eric heard him anyway. Liked to think his son knew what he was doing. Liked to think the forgiveness Eric had offered in his journal was real and lasting and true. He had to believe that, because belief was all he had left. Belief and purpose and the desperate hope that his pain could prevent someone else's. That had to be enough because it was all he had. All he would ever have. Chapter 11, The Call. August 14th, 2024. Present day, 20 years after Eric's death. Marcus Donovan, 71 years old, sat in his garage staring at the email from David Chen. The same David Chen he'd taught 14 years ago. The same young captain who'd asked what to do about missing his child's birth. Chen had chosen differently than Marcus, had fought his chain of command, had delayed his deployment, had been there when his son was born, had taken the career hit and never regretted it. Marcus had followed Chen's career from a distance. The young officer had stayed in the army, but on his own terms, had set boundaries, had learned to say no, had built a family while serving his country, had done what Marcus had never managed, had balanced the mission and the love. And now Chen was in Afghanistan, cut off, surrounded, watching his soldiers die, asking for the 31st Commandment, asking how to choose when all choices led to blood. Marcus looked at his phone, at the email address that wouldn't work in reverse, at the question he couldn't answer directly. But maybe he didn't need to answer directly. Maybe he could find another way. Marcus called Fort Moore, the armor school, asked to speak to the commanding general, pulled every string he had, called in every favor accumulated over 40 years of service. It took 6 hours of calls and arguments and explanations, 6 hours of fighting through bureaucracy and protocol and the machinery of military command. But finally at 11 p.m., Marcus got what he needed, a secure video link to Phoebe Salerno, to Captain David Chen's position. The connection was grainy, satellite communications in the mountains, but Marcus could see Chen's face, exhausted, scared, but still in control, still leading, still fighting. Colonel Donovan, Chen said, relief evident in his voice. Sir, you got my email. I did, and I came to answer it. Sir, I don't have much time. We're surrounded. 6 KIA, 4 WIA, maybe 12 hours before they overrun us. I need to know. The 31st Commandment. You never finish teaching it. What's the answer when all choices are bad? Marcus looked at this young officer, this man he'd taught, this father who'd chosen his family, this soldier now facing the ultimate test. David, there is no perfect answer. No choice that saves everyone. No decision that doesn't cost something. That's the horror of war. That's the burden of command. You choose and someone dies. You choose differently and different people die. But someone always dies. Then what do? You make the choice you can live with, not the choice that saves the most people, not the choice that looks best in the after-action report. The choice you can live with, the choice that lets you sleep at night, the choice that honors who you are and what you believe. Chen shook his head. That's not an answer, sir. It's the only answer, David. I saved 8 soldiers in Mosul, made the tactically correct decision. By any measure, it was the right call. But it cost me my son, cost me everything. And I've spent 20 years asking if it was worth it. 20 years without a clear answer. So you're saying there's no right choice? I'm saying the right choice is the one you make deliberately, the one you choose with your eyes open, the one you own completely. If you save your men by withdrawing, you'll face court-martial, but you'll know you chose them, chose their lives over your career, chose love over duty. And that choice, that deliberate choice, that's the 31st Commandment. Chen was quiet, processing. Sir, you chose duty over your son. You regret it. So you're telling me to choose differently? I'm telling you to choose consciously. I didn't. I just defaulted to what I'd always done. Chose the mission because that's what soldiers do. But you're different. You already chose your family once, when your son was born. You already know how to say no. So if you choose to stay and fight, make sure it's really your choice. Not just habit, not just training, but your actual conscious decision. And if I choose to withdraw, save my men but disobey orders, then you live with that choice. Face the consequences. Accept the cost. But know you chose it. Deliberately, consciously, with full knowledge of what it meant. Marcus leaned forward, looked directly into the camera. David, Eric forgave me before he died, told me to let go, told me it was okay, but I couldn't forgive myself, couldn't let go, because I never really chose. I just did what I always did. You have a chance to do differently, to make a real choice. Whatever that choice is, own it, live it, let it define you. Don't spend the next 20 years wondering what would have happened if you'd chosen differently. Chen nodded slowly. Thank you, sir. I think I understand. What are you going to do? I'm going to save my men, going to withdraw, going to disobey the orders that will get them killed. And I'm going to face the consequences knowing I made the right choice, the only choice I could live with. Marcus felt something in his chest, pride maybe, or relief, or vindication. The knowledge that his lessons had reached someone, had helped someone choose better. Then do it, save them, and know that whatever happens, you chose consciously. That matters. That's the difference between sacrifice and waste. Sir, one more question. Do you regret serving, knowing what it cost? Marcus thought about that. 20 years he'd been thinking about it. No, I don't regret serving. I regret how I served. I regret not setting boundaries, not learning to say no, not protecting what mattered most. But serving itself, no, that was worth it, just not the way I did it. I understand, sir. Thank you for everything, for teaching me, for showing me another way, for helping me make this choice. The connection started breaking up, satellite signal fading. David, Marcus said quickly, save them, bring them home, and then go home yourself. Go home to your son. Be the father I never was. That's the 31st Commandment. Choose love. Always choose love. The connection died. Marcus sat in his garage, alone with his memories and his ghosts. But for the first time in 20 years, he felt something other than regret. He felt hope. Hope that David would make it, would save his men, would face the consequences with courage and integrity, would go home to his son and be present and whole and there, would do what Marcus had never done, would choose love over duty, family over mission, presence over absence, would prove that the 31st commandment wasn't just theory, that it was possible, that someone could learn from Marcus's mistakes and choose differently. That had to be enough. Not redemption, not forgiveness, not healing, but hope, purpose, the knowledge that his pain had prevented someone else's. Marcus stood, walked to his truck, drove to the cemetery. Eric's grave. He visited every week, every Tuesday, like clockwork, bringing flowers, sitting, talking to a gravestone that never answered. Tonight he had something to say. Eric, I helped someone today. Young officer, good man, good father. He was facing the same choice I faced, and I helped him choose differently. Helped him choose his family, his soldiers, his integrity. I think he's going to make it, son. I think he's going to do what I should have done. And that's because of you. Because losing you taught me what matters. Because your death gave meaning to your life in ways I never expected. I'm not grateful for your death. Never that. But I'm grateful for what I learned. And I'm grateful I could help David. That's my legacy now. Not the medals or the missions, but the soldiers I helped choose better. That's how I honor you. How I make your death mean something. I hope that's okay. I hope you approve. I hope wherever you are, you know that I'm trying, still trying, will never stop trying. I love you, son. Always did. Always will. Your father. Marcus stood, placed the flowers, walked back to his truck, drove home through the dark California night. Tomorrow he would call Fort Moore, would volunteer to testify at David's court-martial if needed, would defend his choice, would explain the 31st commandment to generals and lawyers and anyone who would listen, would fight for David the way he'd never fought for himself. Because that's what the 31st commandment meant. Not just choosing love for yourself, but defending that choice, protecting it, teaching it, making sure others knew it was possible. That was his purpose now, his mission, his reason for continuing. He would teach the 31st commandment until his last breath, would help every soldier, every father, every person facing impossible choices understand that love mattered more than duty, that family trumped mission, that being present was more important than being promoted. He would teach it because he'd learned it the hardest way possible. And he would hope that somewhere, somehow, Eric knew his death hadn't been meaningless, knew his father had learned, knew the lesson had been passed on. That had to be enough. It had to be, because it was all Marcus had, all he would ever have. And after 20 years of regret, it finally felt like enough. Epilogue, the testimony. 6 months later, February 2025, Fort Moore, Georgia. The courtroom was packed. Captain David Chen's court-martial had drawn attention. Officers from across the Army, media, families, everyone wanting to see what would happen to the officer who disobeyed orders to save his men. Chen had done exactly what he'd said, withdrawn his platoon, saved all 10 surviving soldiers, brought them home, then turned himself in and faced the consequences. The prosecution wanted a dishonorable discharge, wanted to make an example, wanted to show that disobeying orders, no matter the reason, was unacceptable. The defense called witnesses, soldiers Chen had saved, families grateful their sons and daughters had come home, officers who testified to Chen's character and competence. And they called Marcus Donovan. Marcus walked to the witness stand in his dress uniform. 72 years old now, chest full of medals, earned over 40 years, the embodiment of military service and sacrifice. The defense attorney asked him to explain his relationship to Captain Chen. I taught Captain Chen at the armor school 14 years ago. He was one of my best students, bright, dedicated, but more importantly, he understood what I was trying to teach. Not just tactics, but wisdom. The hard lessons about balancing duty and love. And what lessons were those, Colonel? That family matters. That being present matters. That sometimes the right choice is to say no to the mission and yes to the people you love. The prosecutor objected. Irrelevant. The judge overruled. Colonel Donovan, are you saying Captain Chen made the right decision by disobeying his orders? Marcus looked at Chen, at this young officer who'd chosen his men over his career, who'd chosen love over duty, who'd done what Marcus had never managed. Yes, he made the right decision, the only decision his conscience would allow. And I wish I'd had his courage 20 years ago. Can you explain? Marcus told his story, all of it. Eric, the missed moments, the broken promises, the choice to deploy instead of stay, the price paid in a dead son and a shattered family. The courtroom was silent, absolutely silent. Captain Chen faced an impossible choice, Marcus continued. Stay and fight and watch his soldiers die, or withdraw and save them but face court-martial. There was no good option, only less bad ones. And he chose the option he could live with. That's not cowardice. That's not dereliction. That's leadership, real leadership. The kind that puts people before protocol, lives before orders, love before duty. Are you advocating that soldiers should disobey orders whenever they disagree? No, I'm advocating that soldiers should think, should question, should understand that blind obedience isn't loyalty, it's abdication. Captain Chen didn't disobey lightly, he did it deliberately, consciously, knowing the cost. That's not rebellion, that's integrity. The prosecutor cross-examined, tried to paint Marcus as a bitter old man, a failed officer trying to justify his own regrets by defending a coward. Marcus didn't take the bait. My failures are my own. Captain Chen is not a coward. He's what I should have been, what every officer should aspire to be. Someone who serves with wisdom, who knows when to obey and when to question, who understands that not every order is just and not every mission is necessary, who chooses love when love matters most. The trial lasted 3 days. In the end, the court-martial board deliberated for 6 hours. Their verdict? Guilty of disobeying orders. Sentence? Article 15 non-judicial punishment. Reprimand, no jail time, allowed to remain in the Army with no discharge. It was as close to vindication as Chen could hope for. After the verdict, Chen found Marcus outside the courthouse. Sir, thank you for testifying, for defending me, for teaching me the 31st Commandment. You defended yourself, David. You made the right choice and stood by it. That's all any of us can do. Sir, I want you to meet someone. Chen gestured. A young boy, maybe 14 years old, ran up. Dark hair, bright eyes, smile like sunshine. This is my son, Colonel Eric Chen, named after someone important. Marcus felt his throat close, his eyes burn, couldn't speak. Chen continued. You told me that story, about your son, about what you lost, and I named my boy after him, so I'd never forget. So every time I said his name, I'd remember what matters, who matters, why I chose to be there instead of somewhere else. Marcus knelt down, eye level with the boy. Hello, Eric. It's an honor to meet you. My dad says you're a hero, the boy said. Says you taught him how to be a good soldier and a good daddy. Your dad is the hero. He saved his soldiers and came home to you. That takes real courage. The boy hugged him, quick and spontaneous, the way children do, then ran off to play. Chen looked at Marcus. Sir, I'm getting out. End of this year. Going to teach history, just like your son wanted to do. Going to tell the stories, teach the lessons. Make sure the next generation learns from our mistakes. That's good. That's right. Eric would have liked that. There's one more thing, sir. I'm writing a book about leadership, about choices, about the 31st Commandment. And I want to dedicate it to your son, to Eric Donovan, the boy whose death taught his father wisdom and whose father taught that wisdom to others. Would that be okay? Marcus couldn't speak, could only nod. Chen extended his hand. Marcus shook it, then pulled the young officer into a hug. Thank you, Marcus whispered. Thank you for choosing right. Thank you for proving it's possible. Thank you for honoring my son. Thank you for teaching me, sir, for showing me another way, for being brave enough to share your pain so others could avoid it. They stood there for a long moment. 2 soldiers, 2 fathers, 2 men who'd learned the same lesson in different ways. Then Chen left with his son, walking across the Fort Moore grounds. Father and son, hand in hand, present and whole and there. Marcus watched them go, felt something in his chest, not quite healing, not quite forgiveness, but something close, something real, something that felt like peace. He pulled out his phone, took a picture of the moment. Chen and his son walking away. Saved it, would print it, would put it on his wall next to Eric's photograph. Evidence that the lesson had been learned, that the 31st Commandment had been passed on, that his son's death, his own failures, had somehow impossibly led to something good. It didn't redeem him, didn't erase the past, didn't bring Eric back. But it meant something, and meaning Marcus had learned was all anyone could really hope for. He walked to his truck, drove home, sat in his garage surrounded by photographs. Added one more, Chen and his son, Eric Chen, named after a boy who died waiting for his father. named so another father would never forget to choose love. Marcus looked at all the photographs. 40 years of service, thousands of students, hundreds of soldiers saved, dozens of lessons taught, and one son lost. The math still didn't work, would never work. But maybe math wasn't the point. Maybe the point was just this. He'd turned his worst failure into his best teaching, had converted pain into wisdom, had helped others avoid his mistakes, had honored Eric by making his death mean something. That was the 31st commandment. Not just about choosing love, but about learning from loss, about turning tragedy into testimony, about making sure the price paid, however terrible, purchased something of value for someone else. Marcus stood, saluted the photographs, the students, the soldiers, his son. "Thank you," he said to them all. "Thank you for teaching me. Thank you for forgiving me. Thank you for letting me learn, even when it was too late, even when it cost everything. Thank you." The photographs didn't answer. They never did. But Marcus liked to think they heard anyway. Liked to think Eric knew his father had learned, knew the lesson had been passed on, knew the commandment would endure. That had to be enough. After 20 years, it finally was enough. Not healing, not redemption, not forgiveness, but enough. Purpose and meaning and the hope that somewhere, some young officer facing impossible choices would remember the 31st commandment, would choose love, would choose family, would choose presence, would choose differently than Marcus had chosen, would choose better, would prove that the lesson, however hard learned, was true. That was Marcus's legacy now. Not the medals or the missions, not the battles won or the tactics perfected, but this, the 31st commandment, written in his son's blood, paid for with his own regrets, passed on so others might choose wisely. Choose love. Always choose love. Because missions end, but love doesn't. Because duty is important, but family is essential. Because at the end of everything, the only thing that matters is whether you were there, whether you showed up, whether you chose the people you loved when choosing them mattered most. That was the 31st commandment. That was Marcus's truth. That was Eric's legacy. And after 20 years of regret and loss and searching for meaning, Marcus Donovan finally understood that it was enough. It had always been enough. He just needed 20 years to see it. The end.